All right, so yeah, we went viral on one of recent videos we posted on TikTok talking about the Florida housing bubble.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, some of these comments went wild
Yeah,
with
yeah.
what they were saying.
Yeah. It's a lot of back and forth. Yeah, people saying no, the prices aren't going down in the Florida market, and then some people were saying, yeah, I've seen the prices tank. Some people were saying that it's the place to buy real estate. Some people are like, I'd rather, live in a boiling pot than live in Florida.
A lot of people, it seemed that the most engaging threads of comments were just completely driven by hate.
Yeah.
Very little of it was actually debating the points that we were making in the previous video about Florida going into a housing bubble where the market is starting to crash. If you look at the numbers, though, Florida is objectively seeing massive increases in inventory across the board. And that's due to a variety of reasons. But obviously, Florida is such a big state. That's like saying the housing market in the entire United States is going down. Obviously, there's going to be areas of Florida that are going to do better than others. The ones that are going to see the biggest increase in inventory and decrease in prices are going to be the ones with the most surge in demand over the past 4 years since COVID. And now that they're a little overbuilt and they're finishing all these new constructions, you're going to have people pulling back with the rise of insurance rates. And so it's not the same across the board, but still it can be said home prices are projected to go down in Florida.
Yeah. And then a lot of people were saying, well, if you surgically remove condos from the overall prices of that equation, that single family homes and whatnot are still going up, but it's the condos with the HOA dues, the new regulations because of the, what was it? It was the Surfside condo collapse in 2021.
That's it.
And so a lot of condos are getting it through HOA and stricter regulations. But if you remove those from the equation, like, oh, single family homes, great place to live. But if you include the condos in the equation, across the board, it does look like Florida's dropping.
Yeah, according to DB, he looks to be a realtor in South Florida. I sell in South Florida. Condos are pretty cooked. Single family is robust if it's priced right, which seems to be accurate. Mm-hmm. But again, that can't be applied for the entire state. That may be where he's doing business in around Tampa, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, but in places like...
I actually saw something that said Tampa's one of the cities that's...
Getting hit the worst?
Getting hit, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can read out some of the great comments we got and discuss them. Let's just start from the top there. I know you just did that one at the bottom, but let's start from the top, because the top one is the top comment, which says 30 years of Republican rule will destroy a state.
I don't understand that, because if we're talking about Florida, Florida's always been a purple state. It's always been one of the major swing states in the country. Yeah,
that's what some people say. Yeah, it's been a purple state where it's kind of a little bit of both. But I did see some people saying that it swung recently to a little bit of a red state, and that can destroy a state. And then a lot of people were saying as a counter to that, but look at the blue cities and how the cities are destroyed. But then yet again, I do think of like the Texas grid going down. It's like, well, that was a, big old strong Texas. We can secede from the United States and be okay by ourselves. And their whole power grid got knocked out by a winter. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I really don't know whether, a Republican ruled state will destroy a state. I mean, I'd have to really go into the nuances of that. Yeah. But y'all can hash it out in the comments and really help us figure it out. Red states versus blue states. Who run them best and who destroys them the best?
The question I'm curious about, the claim that they're making is that whether it's a blue or a red state is indicative of whether the housing prices will go up or down.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be a trend at all across the country.
Yeah, there's a lot of other factors other than politics that can bring home prices and inventory up and down that have nothing to do with politics.
Yeah.
But politics can be a factor.
Since the beginning of the pandemic, Texas and Florida, southeastern United States, coastal areas have absolutely skyrocketed. During that same time period, during the biggest part of the lockdown in the country, California and New York specifically saw a massive migration out of the state. Now, however, that role seems to be reversed, whereas actually California is projected to have a massive increase in home value. They're supposed to be one of the biggest states, like areas like San Diego and Los Angeles are expected to appreciate a lot this year. And I'm seeing a lot of articles come out about people moving back to New York City and how that market is booming. Whereas Florida and Texas now are seeing the highest rise in inventory, and their home prices are projected to fall.
Yeah.
And so if you were talking about during the pandemic, yeah, the home prices in those areas absolutely skyrocketed, but now that we're out of all that, we're into a new era, it seems that those roles have completely reversed.
Yep. Yeah, it's, there's a lot of nuance factors. There's many things that you can look into of what affects all those dynamics.
I don't understand how so many people can afford houses in California.
Well, it's the median income is much higher in California.
Yeah, but still, the median income is a lot higher, but it's not vastly higher compared to these other areas. I mean, the average home price in San Diego we were looking up is closer to $1 million per home.
Yeah.
Where are all these people that are buying all of these homes?
Well, I think it also has factors to do with the climate in California is much more preferable than Florida. We live in Louisiana, so Florida is very like Louisiana. It can get quite hot, whereas California remains perfect. But the reason being is a lot of high net worth individuals who have the money, who are making the big money, will be able to just, I want to live here versus I don't want to be hot most of the year. I want to live in a pristine climate with mountains, beaches, ski slopes, redwoods, all those big nature things that California has, and the weather remains nice most of the year. So, and I think it attracts the high net worth income earners who can actually afford those properties, and they all flock there over, whereas Florida would appeal more to median income of people who are trying to maybe save more and try to get ahead a little more, whereas California is more like the high-tech earners and things like that. They all flock there.
I think that Florida saw an increase in its housing market for two reasons. One of them is being for political, socioeconomic reasons of people wanting to move to the state for what its billboard, the big reasons it was in the news over the past 4 years, those big ticket items that a lot of people wanted to move to the state. However, I think the bigger reason of why it went through the freaking roof was because the entire country during the pandemic just found out about how amazing Florida's beaches are. You can say all you want about the weather. The beaches themselves are unbelievable.
Yes.
They're the white sand beaches. It's some of the finest sand in the world. It's incredible.
The beaches are incredible.
And so I think that, we've been going to Florida since we're kids. It's only 3 hours away from New Orleans. We would go there every year. Your parents have a place in Perdido Key. We would go there all the time. We knew how amazing those beaches were. But the rest of the country seems to have woken up to how amazing it was.
Yeah.
That's where one of the comments says right here by T, just the letter T. Now Canadians are done with Florida too, commenting on the market going down.
Why would Canadians be in Florida? That's the question.
Because Canada is obviously a hell of a lot colder than the continental United States.
So snowbirds, they're coming to Florida when it's cold in Canada to be on the beaches and enjoy life.
The number one market in Florida is people who have moved there, wanting to live there and have their kids go to school there, have their family roots planted there. The other equal market is people who want second homes in Florida.
Yes.
And that's why Florida only has a 2-year turnaround rate. Before the pandemic, the average American took 7 years from buying a home to selling a home. During the pandemic, that rose to 10 and then up to 11 years. So people were waiting a lot longer because of interest rates going back up, yada, yada. But in Florida, the average turnaround rate is 2 years. So wow. People are buying properties there and within 2 years are selling them. That is the majority. The majority of those are obviously second homes. People who thought that they'd be moving there, thought they'd be going there all the time. Maybe they're in New York. Maybe they're in one of the northern states where it gets a lot colder. They end up going there a few times, try to rent it out. The profits don't really match up to what they expected, and so now they're moving to sell it.
Okay, yeah. Next comment will go to, this is Jeff Richetti. DeSantis has destroyed Florida. I don't know if he's destroyed Florida or not. I know there was like a big controversy where he duked it out with Disney and things of that nature. But, I've actually heard good things about DeSantis from blue and red teams. And I've actually heard bad things about DeSantis from blue and red teams. So we'll let you guys hash that out in the comments. Is DeSantis a good thing for Florida or not?
And will he be president? Here's one. Wait until the next major hurricane hits. Florida is cooked. Luigi husband.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Is that like the guy who killed the insurance guy? Is that what that's referring to? Luigi husband?
Yeah. They want Luigi to be their husband. Yeah.
That's so strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing that Florida and Louisiana have in common is the hurricanes have driven insurance costs up through the roof, where it actually has, and that was a big critique on if you compare California versus Florida, is yes, California has been higher home costs, but if you factor in the rising interest rates and you factor in the rising insurance costs in Florida, there's starting to be some kind of, Florida's getting more expensive and more expensive, where it's like, do I want to live in a state where it's hot most of the year, where I can be in California where the weather's perfect most of the year? And a lot of people are saying that's how California is actually could be edging out over Florida, is that the insurance costs from hurricanes and the rising interest rates are kind of boosting Florida up closer to California.
But California is also getting hit hard by rising insurance costs
with the wildfires.
Yeah,
yes.
They're not free from that. They're getting equally destroyed right now. There's a lot of companies that are leaving California that will refuse to write policies, just like they are in coastal areas like Florida.
There's areas though, whereas a hurricane could come in and hit a whole section, where I think in California there are areas where the wildfire is more likely not to be a thing and more likely to be a thing.
So where the entirety of Florida is exposed.
Yeah, whereas Florida, it's like, a hurricane could hit any part of that and do some things.
Yes. Yeah, the hurricanes are a big factor. We have to deal with that every single summer. I always say you could be living your life completely normally, and then on a Tuesday, you see something pop up on the radar, some tropical depression is creeping up in the Gulf, and then by Friday, your whole life is completely changed forever. Any one of these things could crop up at any time and completely wipe you out.
Yep. Then, okay, we'll go to the next comment. Let's see. Yeah, how many of those listings in Florida are condos that people are trying to dump due to insane HOA fees? Probably a lot. Schooly life. So, yeah, that's what they say. The HOA fees are rising because of the Surfside condo collapse, are making the stricter laws on associations and such, and there's more rules and regulations on building safety, driving up, and also keeping reserve. They've actually enacted new laws on cracking down on HOAs having the proper reserves and stuff. So that's making HOA fees go up, which increases, the monthly note and drives some people out of the affordability of being able to buy a place like that.
And that would also fall in line to the narrative of people who bought it as a second home, and then 2 years later, their HOA and special assessments are up 400%, and then it no longer makes sense to keep it as a rental or as a second getaway with renting it out because those profits, you're underwater.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay, let's go to the next one. Florida and Texas are case studies in poorly managed states. Massive suburban sprawl, poor public services, and terrible infrastructure. Wolf Bro. So yeah, what do you think about that? I did, just off of seeing California, I really think they do a good job of national parks and how they've laid certain things out and how there's a heavy emphasis on the community abroad. Like they have I notice a lot of bike lanes and, stuff of that nature and easy access spots for the public to enjoy themselves. Whereas when I went to Orlando recently, I did notice there was a lot of just cookie cutter, what this guy would say, suburban sprawl, just big projects being thrown up, and they're all Airbnbs. So maybe there's a super, heavy inventory of Airbnbs, and they're all competing with each other, which could be driving the prices of homes down. Because if everyone's doing Airbnbs, then it's like, you're kind of, unless you're the best of the best, you're kind of out of business there because the competition is so heavily.
I think that Texas would suffer from massive suburban sprawl over Florida. Florida's mostly, the reason why people would want to move to Florida is because of the coast. Mm-hmm. And around those areas, I've been to Tampa, I've been to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, all these different areas, these major metropolitan areas in Florida. They don't seem to suffer from that at all. Those are beautiful, very well laid out cities from my estimation. And the majority of those coastal regions are incredible real estate in Florida. Mm-hmm. Whereas Texas, the major cities are all centered in the interior of Texas, like Dallas, Dallas, Fort Worth metropolitan, that huge area. A lot of it, the massive increase in new development is in all those surrounding areas. And you can drive from the heart of Dallas or the heart of Austin and just head in a straight line out one of those major highways and never leave the suburbs for like an hour.
And then, so next comment, BlackRock will buy them all for pennies on the dollar and then rent them all out. Tom.
That is already taking place in New York. I think the statistic is something like BlackRock owns 10% of all rental property in New York City.
Yeah, I think that's... I was under the impression they're buying everywhere pretty much.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Didn't you say, though, that... I think someone actually made a comment, not you. Someone made a comment that BlackRock's actually pulling slightly out of their home business because someone said that if that's a huge liability to BlackRock to own that many assets that you have to insure that could be destroyed by hurricanes, yada, 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 yada. And it can carry some risk with it also. So they're trying to balance it out and not own all those properties.
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
I think that if the market actually does take a nosedive and prices in some areas are getting slashed by 30% from their highs, I think 100% people like BlackRock are going to be coming in and cleaning shop.
And then I commented that we named ourselves BlackArk as an antithetical to BlackRock, so we can all team up and defeat BlackRock in the long run and not live in a world where we're all owned by BlackRock. So let's do it.
We have a long way to go. I love this from DP1255. Yep, it sucks down here. Do not move here. I repeat, do not move here. From Florida.
I was very interested, too, in California people who have moved to Florida and then have decided, I want to move back to California. Mm-hmm. I didn't really see, I've poured through Reddit, X, TikTok and stuff. I didn't really see anyone ever saying, yeah, I'm from Florida, I moved to California and didn't like it, and now I moved back to Florida. But I did see a lot of California to Florida. Okay, yeah, I'm going back to California. And I would be willing to want to see the reasons for that. I expect it's the perfect climate out there, and the many accessibility to the mountains and ski slopes and beaches and all that kind of stuff. But I would definitely want to see you guys argue that out in the comments and let us know people who have lived in California, moved to Florida, and have decided that Florida is better and love Florida more than California, or that Florida is not so good and y'all went back to California after that. And or if there are people that exist who went from Florida to California and love California, or decided, hey, no, I want to go back to Florida. So let us know in the comments.